Well, good morning, gang. My name's Ray. I'm with Team S.T.E.A.M. and this morning I'm out behind Flash Industrial Painting, getting ready to embark on another episode of a tutorial series, the subject of which this time around, not even sure yet. Now, the reason I'm not sure exactly what this tutorial is going to cover is because it definitely doesn't need to be body work, because this truck is a sweetheart. I mean, there's 10-15 dents in the entire back here. None of them are terribly big. Biggest one's like right here. I mean, this truck is a sweetheart. I'm gonna go ahead, use some of this used sand and just get it all abraded front to back so it'll hold my paint and so we don't have to be concerned with it. That being said, this truck in all likelihood is going to be a masking tutorial. We'll see when I open the hood. I've already got that fiberglass video out, so if I open the hood and it's a disaster fiberglass wise, I don't see any reason to do another fiberglass video, but we'll probably end up doing a masking video on this one. As you can tell by the skies around me and by the forecast I looked at this morning, it's supposed to rain off and on all day, so I better get my ass in gear and get this thing blasted, get it in the shop. Well, all right, gang. I got this chassis sandblasted, again, just with used sand, and you can tell it's no longer, it was a semi-gloss, now it's just plain flat. And that's because it was properly abraded with used sand, and so that part of this is ready to go. Got the truck pulled in, got all of the stuff taken off of it that needed to be taken off. And now today, we're gonna focus on masking. And that's really gonna be the focus of this entire video, is the do's and don'ts of masking up your truck. Now, this video isn't gonna cover what I would consider complicated masking, because it's not gonna have a stripe job or anything like that on it. But basic masking, the kind of masking almost anybody that goes to paint their semi or even their car or their pickup or their whatever would do, that's gonna get covered right here. Now, the first thing you're going to want to try and figure out is what to mask and what not to mask. And you'd think that that'd be obvious, right? Like, well, of course we're going to mask the windows. We don't want paint on them. But are you going to mask the jambs? On these Kenworth W900s and on a lot of the Peterbilt 379s, they're pretty darn friendly because the jambs are always black no matter what the color of the interior is. And that goes with everything, so who cares, right? And this part of the jambs is always stainless. So you want to keep it that way. And that makes it pretty easy. So what we do here is we decide we're going to go ahead and mask here, right, from here back. And the boys always wrap paper around and tack it on the back side. Same with this, paper, and then push it in here and then tack it back here. And it might seem like a tedious step if you just want to get your truck banged out over a weekend or something like that. But take the time to do it. You're going to get sick of opening your door and seeing that kind of amateur look to it every time you open your door. You're going to regret it. So, you know, when it comes time to figure out exactly what you're going to mask, definitely think about the jambs. And then another thing you want to think about is stickers. If the sticker is a heavier duty sticker and in good shape like this one is, we mask them. And another thing to think about is tags on your truck. If you've got like gearboxes or something like that, pumps that have little metal tags on them for the information you need. And what we do is we just take the size of tape that we think will work, or two pieces of tape next to each other, and we just rip the tape off quite a bit longer than the tag itself and just plaster it on there. Then take a razor and just cut off the ends. And then you've got your tag masked up. And then you have to decide what all you're going to take off your truck and what you're going to leave on your truck. Like, for instance, a lot of these we take off. On these particular trucks, we don't, because they've got they've got rivets on them. They've got huck rivets on them, and we can cut off huck rivets, but I don't really see the sense in getting on the backside and grinding out a huck rivet just so we can remove something that's basically a rectangle. It's not going to hurt anything to leave it there, and so we always leave them there. And so right here, for instance, we've got Kittrick. The first thing he does, and he didn't have to be told. These boys don't have to be told anything by me. They can mask every bit as good as I can. But the first thing you can see he does is he cleans this all up. He gets this all cleaned up so he can go ahead and mask it without having dust or oil or Armor All or anything like that in it. Now, as far as motors are concerned, you know, you can try and be careful and paint around it, or you can wrap the whole thing meticulously in plastic. There's a lot of things you can do. Throw tarps over it. What we end up doing is either tarps or, more often than not, just old bed sheets. We do a ton of masking around here with old bed sheets because they'll sit on something, they'll stick in a way that just the weight of them and the texture of the fabric will hold them to things pretty darn well. even in a little bit of a breeze. And they're easy to put on, they're easy to move around, they're easy to manipulate, they're easy to take back off. So a lot of times we'll just throw and tuck in bed sheets around the motor whenever we go to shoot paint. And then the next day, just pull them right off, we're done. And you always have the option, if this truck is, if the vehicle you're working on is your pride and joy, or a show vehicle, or, a labor of love that, you don't mind taking all summer to do it or whatever, then take off whatever you want. Pull the engine, pull the sleeper, pull the fuel tanks. I've had some weird comments and requests over the years. I've had people try and kind of debase me over what I do and I don't do in this regard. I've had people say stupid shit like, why didn't you pull the sleeper to paint it? Why don't you? Try pulling a sleeper, then painting it, and then reinstalling it without screwing up your new paint job. I mean, not to mention every other bolt breaks off and wiring harnesses. Now you're undoing and redoing the AC in some of those, and I don't want to mess with any of that shit. And these are just work trucks. So if that's what you want to do, you do it. I've had people say, how come you don't pull the windshield? Again, you do it. I had a guy get on my comments one time and say, well, I can't believe you didn't pull the side window in the passenger door. And I just did what I always do. I didn't answer him. I didn't do anything. I just deleted him because he said it in a rude way. He wasn't asking a question. He was asking a question in a rude fashion, basically accusing me of being rinky-dink because I didn't pull a goddamn window out of a door. We don't do that here. We don't pull fuel tanks. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. You want that done? And some of my customers do. Some of my customers will haul me a truck that doesn't have the fuel tanks or anything on it. Good for them. We'll do your truck. We'll give it back. You put the fuel tanks on. We're good to go. As you can tell, we're not doing any masking yet. We've been at this for a little bit, and we're not doing any masking yet, because you can see Brent, he's cleaning. Because those black rubbers, they don't even have to be that old. But this is probably 07, so we're talking 18-year-old truck. If it's anything over 10 years old, for sure, those black rubbers build kind of a film on them of the black rubber that they're made of. You rub your finger across it and then you look at your fingers and there's black on there. That's what that is. And that will screw up your masking. Even if you get it initially masked, as soon as you go hitting it with air pressure, you'll have parts ripping up. And once you get a little part that rips up and you hit it with air pressure, it'll turn the whole masking piece that you've masked into a balloon, and it'll just start pulling up everywhere. Then you got to redo everything. So that's why these guys go through, because we've all made these mistakes. That's why we do what we do. And that's what the reason for this video is to keep you from making all the mistakes that we've made in the past that we've had to learn from. Same with tires. See how clean that outer rim is? Because they already went through and they cleaned that up, because it's hard to get tape to stick, well, to dirt, but even just to the rubber itself. But once you rub it down with some sort of wet rag, some sort of cleaner, we just use glass cleaner. And then it's good to go. It'll hold tape all day and night. Now, as far as tape is concerned, here's what I do. Here's one of the brands that I buy. And it's not a promotion. It's just one that, I get off of Amazon. And that's what we use. And I've used many, many different kinds of vinyl tape. And so I've kind of shopped around quite a bit. And over the years, this is the one I've settled on because it's very affordable, easy to get, and the quality's there. That expensive 3M vinyl tape, you pay that much for a roll, and then you pull a strand off of it and look at it in the light, and there's little hairs, little strands from mistakes in the cutting process where they have a giant long sleeve of it, and then they just cut it into the sizes they need. It's an all fully automated deal, but they must not keep that wheel sharp enough because it comes off there fuzzy. And so that's the enemy. You can't have tape with little ragged edges and fuzzy shit on it when its whole purpose is to leave a super clean line. And that's when I abandoned 3M vinyl tape altogether, is when I started. Well, I did quite a while ago because of the cost, but then one time I had to get a roll because I had no choice. I was out of it and I had to go to the store or something to get a roll. I don't remember what it was, but when I saw how low that quality was, I said, that's it. I'm never doing that 3M vinyl tape again. Now here, Kittrick's getting me initial masking done. And as you can see, we didn't use vinyl tape on this. We use vinyl tape around windows and around so much stuff, but we just choose not to on this. Because not only does it like to kind of roll up around the corners as the job goes on, but it really doesn't matter. We're not in here scratching on it. We're not in here hitting it with sanders. Whereas over here, you're going to be bumping up against this with sanders and scratch pads and everything else. And all that does is weaken and tear and mess up the paper tape almost instantly. But here, we're not going to be hitting it because this is so much this is so raised up. It's almost a 1/4 inch out. So that's why we can get away with that, and that's why we do that. So when it comes time to unmask it, peels right off there, no problem. And we didn't have to afford to put, you know, the vinyl tape on something it doesn't necessarily need to be on. And so around here, around your grill, yes, vinyl tape. When we're masking these up, no. We just take a piece of paper that's got tape on it, wrap it around there, and then seal it all up. It doesn't matter. It's not going to get hit by any sanders. It's not going to get compromised. Right in here, definitely 100% vinyl. Even on those, we'll wrap that in vinyl. Anything that's going to be in contact with your procedures, you probably want to try and wrap with vinyl before you do any other masking. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through what it takes to mask up one of these raised windows. And you'll find these raised windows on semis. You'll find them on all sorts of equipment. Every piece of dirt moving equipment that's got windows in it has got this type of window in it. And I'll show you how we mask those up. Now, the first thing you want to do is pull your tape out a little ways to get started. And you always want to keep in mind that this tape in the factory is wound on there kind of tight. And that being said, if you string this tape along things tightly, you pull it good and snug so it's straight and tight, it'll shrink up over the course of the job. And it'll shrink into these corners. All of a sudden it'll be pulled 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch out of the corner when you show up the next day. It will move around. And if you're going across things like this, when you do a stripe job and there's little ridges like this, if you run your tape across there, and I'll show you, you run your tape across there like that, and you string it tight, and then you push it back into that corner, you'll come back in even 15 minutes and this will be pulled back out. The next day it'll be pulled out clear to here. You'll have this big string across there. It's never going to sit in there flat unless you take the time to string it out and then hold it just snug enough, just tight enough with the tension between your hands to just make it straight, not to stretch it. You're just making it straight, barely putting any tension at all on it. And then again, you're just touching things. You're just dabbing it into place right where you need it. And then you can see I've left that loose. All this from this seam over is loose now. I didn't string it tight across there. Then you come in with your spreader, and I'll show you what I use. It's the same spreaders I use to spread fiberglass, same spreaders I use to spread bodywork, same spreaders. One of these. Then I'll come through with this just lightly tacked into place. Again, no tension on it whatsoever. And then I'll go ahead, push it in there with that, right? And give it just take about a 1/4 of an inch of the tape and press it down. If you press it down coming out too far, then you'll have a crooked spot in your stripe. And striping is difficult for that reason. A lot of times you'll end up going over the same spot 5, 6, 7 times. And if you go over it enough times, then I don't trust the stickiness on the tape anymore. Then I just redo it entirely. That's why my stripes are as straight as an arrow. I've had people hundreds of times in my career ask me if they're vinyl. If it's a stripe that I bought from a store and installed on the truck afterwards, because they're that straight. And that's the reason, is because like everything we do, we take the time to do it right, even if it takes 100 tries. So here, as you can see now, we've got tension on it out to about 1/4 of an inch. We've got a, not tension, but it's flattened out and sticky and stuck to it for about 1/4 of an inch out. If you look at it and you look down the stripe and you see that part is straight, then you're free to continue. Don't bother continuing until you do. You'll just have that much more to take back up and redo. So once we know that that's straight, then we'll come over here. And let's say we're just going across this. You won't ever, hardly ever anyway, have to stripe across a window. But if you do a stripe job on your truck, you'll go across that window that's on the lower side of the passenger door. So this is gonna come up. And of course, you've masked your window up first. Let's just say this window is completely masked up. You don't do your stripe first, you do your window first. But let's just say it is. Then you'll come across here. And again, You've already got your stripe marked out. I always mark mine out with a pen or even just a little piece of tape if you don't want to put pen on your project. And if you do put the pen on your project, a pen mark, put it on the side of the tape that's going to be in the stripe. So in other words, that little pin mark gets painted over and it doesn't matter. It's not out on your project. When you go to unmask it, you have all these little pin marks where your stripe was supposed to go because they're on the side where the stripe actually is. So let's say we've got a pin mark here. And what I do is I just carefully push it without any tension. You know, see, I'm not holding any tension on this. Just enough to make it straight. Then you just push on it. Then I push on this numerous times. You don't push on it here and then go like that. Because if you do, then there's a really good chance that you put just a tiny little crook in your stripe. It's very, very finicky. And that's why almost no outfits that do stripe jobs do them correctly. You can get down and look right down their stripes and be like, oh, well, there's a bobble and there's this and there's that. And that's because there's a lot of tricks to it. And if you don't know all the tricks, you just don't know. So you don't tap it in place here and then run it across. You tap it in place here and then you lightly tap across. And most times when I do that, even that little tapping process, I plant my palm first. Plant your palm, then tap it. Otherwise, you could be tapping here and here and here, you know, putting a little bit of English on it, not knowing it. And then you've got it dabbed into what looks like a constellation. So plant your palm, barely push on it, and then barely push on it on the way back. Then lightly push over it, then go ahead and put some force on it. That's the procedure. That's what you do for a stripe job. And if you don't do that, you're probably not doing it right, and it'll probably show in the results. But aside from stripes and aside from how to handle those little crooks, see, this one here I did a few minutes ago. Look, it's already pulling out. It's only been a couple minutes, it's already pulling out. This one, not. Because I didn't have any tension on the tape when I put that in there. Now I'll go ahead and show you how to do a window. And so again, pull it out and then let some slack happen to it. That way it can shrink back up a little bit. These are tight. From the factory, they're tight. They're wound on here tight because they have to be. It's not their fault. But you have to adjust for that. So you you allow it some slack. Then I never plant the end of the stripe right where it needs to be. You can really waste a lot of time with that. I plant it out here onto the project a little bit, see? Just like that. Then I work it up onto where it needs to be. So then I'll work it up here, the whole time just pushing on it until it barely meets the truck. And that might take you a few tries to get to where it just barely is touching between the rubber and the paint. Okay, if you want to raise this up a little bit. Then you string it back. And you try not to string it really tight as you go. I string out a little bit, not too much, about a foot. Something like that to give myself some room. Then you'll come in as close as you can get without being, unrealistic. You start bending on it and it will put a bend in your tape that will show up. This tape does bend. And so if I grab a hold of it right here and pull it out pretty good and then let it go, you're going to see there's a bend in this tape. So you want to try to avoid that. You want to be as gentle with your tape as you can. You pull it up here. And what I do is I'll get my fingernail and I'll just put it in there as I go and then guide it. And then I'll come back a little ways and barely touch it in place. And then touch it. Then I'll run my fingernail down it. Or a lot of times I'll just use this and run that down it too. This you can do either way. And I'll do the same thing over and over again. We'll come up here. And for as long as we've been doing it, I don't have to go every 2-3 inches and then tap it back. And then every 2 or 3 inches and then tap it back. But if you're a beginner, I would suggest taking your time and doing whatever you can. We will do usually a whole surface. So I'll come back here. I'll make sure it's not touching the cab anywhere. And I'll hit about the halfway point. Tap it in place. Or press it in place. Come out here, same thing. Press it in place. Where I held it here is out a little bit, so I just came in a little bit further and further until I got it right where I want it. This I'm going to disregard. This is what counts. So then I'll come through here and just barely touch it about every inch or so. Very carefully push it into place. All the way down. Then I'll come through, lightly press on it, and then put some real pressure on it. Now we've got this good and straight. And then when I go to come around the corner, I'll go ahead and rip this up because, like I said, I didn't quite get it where I wanted it down here. So I'll go ahead and pull this up. And a lot of times you want to do that anyway. When you're doing a stripe job or something like that, you'll press it down up to where you were, and then go ahead and take the time and pull a couple of inches of it up, because you could easily have a little crook right where you finished off and started again. It happens more often than not. So then you pull it up a couple inches and get a good fresh start and come through and barely push it in place. And now here, we'll come around the corner, and you're gonna wanna just guide it ever so gently around the corner. And you might have to do it a couple times, because here I'm trying to take this roll out on the outside of this rivet and on the outside of this little ridge. That's gonna bring it out a little bit. So I'm gonna try and bend it in. I'm gonna try and put some English on this and put this down next to the project, just so I've got it right where I want it. And if you look at it carefully and you see that it's folded out onto the project at all, redo it. Otherwise, when you go to unmask it, especially if you change the color of the truck, you're going to find yourself quite disappointed on put together day when you go to unmask your window and you've painted your truck red and it was white, and then there's just white spots all the way around on these little spots where your masking vinyl got out onto the project just a little bit, just a 32nd of an inch, and you think, maybe you didn't see it, maybe you saw it and thought that's not going to count. It counts, and you'll see it when you go to unmask your project. So again, we're coming down around the corner. I didn't sit and touch it. You notice that around the corner? Well, that's because I've gone around a corner. It's already got tension on it. It's already stuck. On the flat spots, you do need to touch it in place. But around a corner, that's why I strung it all at once, because it's already got tension on it. You have no choice, and it's already stuck to some degree. Now, I'll put more pressure on it, of course. Then we'll come down here. I'm going to do this all at once. See how that took me a couple tries? And then barely touch it. Barely touch it. Then lightly with your fingernail. Now you can put more pressure on it. Then you go around the bottom corners, rinse and repeat. Come all the way around the window with it. And once you've got it to where you're happy with it, look it over. Don't be afraid to look your work over a number of times. And don't be afraid to go ahead and redo it if it needs redone. So now that I've shown you this, I'll go ahead and I'll finish masking up this window in vinyl, and then I'll show you what we do with paper. Now here I've got the vinyl on, and I stopped about where I started. And again, I didn't try and stop up here nice and even. I ran it down onto the project, or down onto the window. I started it down on the window and I finished it down on the window, because there's no reason to try and finish it all precise and right in place. You can get it down on the window and just kind of snap the tape off, and you're done with it at that point. And now the next step is to go ahead and select what size is going to work best for your project. Now that window is probably going to take this size. If you go smaller, you're going to need two different pieces, and that's not the end of the world. Sometimes if, like, say that window is 3 inches too big, then I'm going to be going with this 18 inch and this 6 inch, or just two of the 12 inch and overlap them. Overlapping masking's a great idea. If you have to use more than one piece, get a similar enough size that they are overlapping, but hopefully not by a mile, because you're just kind of wasting material at that point. So for this one, I'm going to choose the 18 inch. And a lot of times I just eyeball it, and a lot of times I get it wrong. I kind of learned a trick from Brent here. What he likes to do is he take a tape measure and he'll measure what he's going to do. And then he'll come over here and he'll put the edge of the tape here and pull the paper out until it meets his specified measurement, and then he'll rip it off. And then he's done. Whereas I'm traveling back to the masking machine half a dozen times because I didn't get my size right. Even though I've been doing this for a million years, eyeballing it doesn't always work. Now I've got my piece of paper. It's 38 and a half, somewhere in there. I mean, I didn't get it super precise, but at least I know I don't have to go back to the masking machine this time. And what I'll do, and that's another thing, we run about a 1/4 inch of tape unless we're masking up fenders or something. Because, I mentioned we do 1/8 inch vinyl on that. So if you're running 1/4 inch tape and you run up onto your vinyl, you're still having a bunch of sticky tape out onto your new paint that doesn't necessarily need to be there. You still have quite a bit of footprint that doesn't need to be there. So don't be afraid to adjust your masking machine for the job. So we'll go do a nice big fat 1/4 inch of stickiness hanging out there that we will go ahead and stick to this. When you do stick it to this, don't stick it right up here to your edge. It'll unmask funny, and sometimes it'll unmask in a way that leaves paint behind, because the paint comes off of this vinyl very easily. So when you go to unmask your paper and you pull your paper and your vinyl off of there, if you're left with this little tiny, just 32nd of an inch of sliver of paint that pulls off the vinyl but doesn't come off with your paper tape, then that's stuck to the project. Then you've got this little paint flap that is on your project that's sticking out into your stripe. You'll be looking at your stripe going, why does it have a weird inconsistent edge? Well, that's because there's this little paint flap left behind. And you can remove that. It's easy to remove. You just lightly rub your finger across it, perpendicular to it, numerous times, and it folds it over. Just a few times, and then it breaks off of there nice and clean. And you can just hit it with an air tip and it blows it right off the project. So yeah, it's fixable. If it happens to you, it's fixable. But to avoid it, try not to run your paper tape clear to the edge of the vinyl. We try and go about halfway. So we start our paper tape about halfway. And here we've got, like I said, about a 1/4 inch of it. That's going to really ensure the masking. It's going to stand up to air pressure. It's going to stand up to abrading next to it, running DAs next to it. Whereas when we go to do stripes and fenders, we're not necessarily abrading right up next to the masking I just did, because we're within our 3-day time limit. We don't have to get that close. And because of that, we adjust the machines out to where there's barely 1/8 of an inch of tape poking out from behind that paper. And then we stick that tape 2/3 the way up the vinyl, the 1/8 inch vinyl. And that way we've got it stuck good enough to withhold, to withstand air pressure and things like that. And we're not abrading next to it, so it doesn't matter. But enough to where it doesn't make a wider, sticky footprint out onto what you're trying to mask. So you've got your 1/8 inch of vinyl, and you've got basically an 1/8 inch of paper tape over it, and they're stuck in the same spot. They're not running concurrent, so you don't have this 1/4 inch or more of sticky tape footprint left on your stripe job or on your fender. But in this particular case, it doesn't matter. We've got the 1/4 inch vinyl, we've got a 1/4 inch of the paper tape, and we can stick it about however we want and get away with it here. So you want to make sure that you're far enough over on both sides. I'm going to go right to the edge of my vinyl on this side, and on the other side it's going to be hanging over a little bit, and that's fine. When the time comes and I get over there, I'll just lightly cut that with a razor and cut it exactly to fit. A little bit more is better than a little bit less. So I'll come up here, and I've just lightly pressed it in place. You can see there's about an 1/8 inch sticking out there. Then we'll come back here, do the same thing, press it in place, all the way along, lightly, and then more assertively. Now this is technically masked. We don't really want to tuck this. We don't want to wrap this around and have this big bunch of wrinkled shit here if we can avoid it. Instead, what we'll do is we'll get a razor blade and we'll cut this to fit. A custom fit is what it's going to be, but it'll also be a very snug and professional fit. And so I'll show you how to score this with your fingernail. You put your fingernail right up next to the vinyl. And once you touch the vinyl with your fingernail, then you go ahead and work it around the corner. And again, it leaves that line, and then you come through with your razor blade and you cut it on that line. Pull it out away from here and you cut it on that line. So again, now that we're on this side and this is all hung over the end here, we'll go ahead and run our finger over until we touch our vinyl. And if you're very careful about it, you can feel right where that vinyl is. Then you go ahead and score it with your finger all the way up, pull it out away from there, and cut it on that line. And so here's what you end up with. Now you've just got your paper tape, or your paper meeting your vinyl tape perfectly. Now we'll go over that with 3/4 inch tape and tape it all down. Like this right here. Take a small piece of it. Pull this down snug. And tape it out where the taping is easy. Just like that. Now I can go ahead and just feel free to tape this without this paper working its way back into the project or in a spot where I don't want it as I go. So now I've got this taped in place. Now I've got this one taped in place. At this point I can feel free to go ahead and run 3/4 inch tape here and here. With that small of a gap, 3/4 works great. Now down here, as you can see, we have much more of a gap. And that goes back to what I was telling you before about, everything you go to mask is going to be different from each other. So you have to make all your decisions. So instead of running 6-inch paper from here up and wasting all that paper, I'm just going to run 1.5-inch tape. That'll work great for this. Won't hurt a thing. So I'll do 3/4 on the sides and the top, and 1.5 inches across the bottom here. Again, we're not trying to take the paper tape clear to the edge of our vinyl tape. See? That's nice and snug. Again, we're going 1/2 to 3/4 of the way across our vinyl tape with our paper tape. Now we'll go ahead and push that down, nice and snug. Then we'll fold this over in the middle and tack it. Now we've got it snug enough that we can go ahead and do the same thing down here. Pull this down nice and snug, tack it. Pull this down nice and snug, tack it. Now we can fold things over. That's what you do. You don't want to run your hand across something like that that's that wide. It'll crease in a weird way. Again, come down here, tack it, fold it over. Now you can go ahead and start pressing it down. And now you have the back window completely masked up. When you become efficient at such things, this is going to take you not even 5 minutes. And now, Kittrick's got the inside of this masked up. We also mask up the hinges unless they've already previously been painted. But that's a different procedure. You don't want to mask those up first and then open and close the door a bunch of times. It'll split your tape in every one of those spots. And then unmasking it becomes a bear. So that's the last thing he'll do here. See this? That way you don't suck your masking in and screw everything up. He goes ahead and takes the time to mask all the way around the door latch, all the way down into here. You see, he wasn't going to be able to stick this to this vinyl, interior vinyl or whatever this is made out of very easily. So all he did was put a bunch of tension on the corner and mask it that way. And that's going to hold that in place just as good as tape out onto this wood. Just an innovative solution for the particular problem at hand. And that's really what masking is that you're trying to come up with innovative solutions for the task at hand. No one rule works for everything when it comes to masking. And so you see, you got the interior masked up here. He went ahead and went around this, so when you open and close the door, it doesn't tear all this up. Went around that latch so it doesn't tear that up. And now this is a good durable masking procedure here. This is a good job here that you can open and close the door if you need to. Everything stays in place and it'll stay in place just like that until the very end of the job. Now, I've seen the questions show up on my comment section a few times now of demonstrating how to mask a wheel. And on these trucks, all we ever mask is the entire wheel because they switch the rims around. They put the inside rims on the outside and then eliminate the inside ones so we can get to the frame easier. And therefore, all we do is we put plastic over the entire wheel. But I'm going to take the time to go ahead and show you how to actually mask up a wheel and separate the wheel from the tire. So when you go to paint the wheels on your truck, you'll know how we do it. What you'll start with is you want to get your 1/4 inch vinyl tape. you want to get a spreader. A lot of times they're known as hard cards. You can just buy a spreader from any hardware store, or if you've got a salesman that knows the lingo, they're called hard cards. A razor blade. Anytime you do masking, don't be afraid to swap out your razor blade. Keep a good sharp razor blade. And 1.5-inch tape. And then here we've got, this is the brand I use of the overspray protective sheeting. We just call it plastic. I've tried quite a few brands and quite a few types, and the problem that most of them have is that they have too much of a pencil hardness. They're too, if you want to call it, brittle. You get them all masked up and you come through with a blow tip and you try and blow the dust off your project, and it catches that and just rips it all the way. Sometimes it'll rip it. We've done like where we masked up dump truck boxes, and you hit it with air pressure and it'll put a 6-foot rip in it all at once. It's a pain in the ass. And so this particular one is the one that we use, and it doesn't rip very easily, and it works really well for what we're doing. So that's what we've stuck with over the years. First thing we'll do is I always just put a pad down so I can sit or kneel or do whatever I got to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and you clean this thoroughly. And sometimes you got to clean it 3, 4, 5 times. Glass cleaner, sometimes even just thinner. Clean it with thinner. Really get this edge right here clean. That way your tape sticks. If you don't get it clean, you'll know it, because your tape's going to try and come up the whole time. Now what I do, just like when you're masking other things, you want to pull your vinyl tape out, give it a second to rest. Just give it a second to rest so it'll bounce back to some degree, because again, they're strung on the roll fairly tight in the factory. All brands are that way. Then what I do is, again, you don't have to place it clear down in here necessarily. You can place it out of where you're trying to mask to begin with. I'll get it over here where you can see it easier. So I'm about a 1/4 inch out. Then you just work your way in. Use your thumb, your finger, however you do it. Work your way in right next to it. Now, here's the trick, and this is the most important thing. Don't get so caught up in what you're doing that you're concentrating on keeping this edge right here true, keeping the edge of your vinyl right on the edge of your wheel, and in the meantime you're pulling harder and harder and harder on this end. You're really stringing it out tight and pulling hard on this end. All that's going to do is it's going to be constantly trying to pull your vinyl out. But even if you do get it to stick all the way around, you'll come back from lunch and all of a sudden you'll see entire sections that are pulled out. And then what do? Well, then you got to cut that whole section out, or just and redo it, or just start over. So make sure that you don't have a lot of tension. You don't need hardly any tension on your tape to do this. In fact, you need almost none. So you're just putting this out here just to hold it up out of the way, and you're placing it where it goes with your thumb or your finger, or however it ends up for you. But as you can see, it's nice and loose. Look at that. It's nice and loose. And all I'm doing is guiding it with my hand. You don't need to pull it tight to make that corner. Now on smaller wheels, if you're doing like wheels on a boat trailer or something, it's a little more tricky. But again, don't get caught up in pulling and having a bunch of tension on it, because you'll regret it. It'll show up in your results, and it'll be a pain in the ass to go ahead and do. So again, keeping this loose, we're just guiding it and keeping it next to the wheel. That's all we're doing. Pulling as hard as we have to just to keep it next to the wheel. And then we're tucking it down in there with our thumb. Nice and loose, tucking it down in there with our thumb. Just a little bit at a time. You see, I'm moving 1/4 to a 1/2 inch is all I'm doing. Again, and it will go quicker once you get used to it. But as you can see, I'm masking it, and it's not taking very long. So you just continue this process. You just keep tucking it in there with your thumb. Not very much tension. We're just keeping it up next to the wheel. Now, if you're going around and you find those little nubs that stick out from tires all the time, and they're too stiff, or they're too plentiful, or they're too tall or thick, or there's too many of them, whatever you do, sometimes you'll end up having to take a razor blade and just go around that edge wherever they're going to affect you, and just nick them off there with a razor. That only takes a minute, but fixing all that and fighting it the whole time takes way more than a minute. So again, in a way, you're being, productively lazy, which is a lot of auto body. If you can be productively lazy and get away with it, a lot of times you've saved yourself time and you've done it right. So here we'll keep going. Just a little bit at a time, holding just enough tension on it to keep it up next to the wheel. And we're just tucking it in there with our thumb the whole time. And then you just rinse and repeat. And when I do this, I won't be saying much. I'll just speed up the footage when I go to do it in editing, so it doesn't take the whole time to do it. But you get the point of how to do it. And at this point, I will just do the wheel, and then I'll just speed that footage up. Now, again, just like that window I masked up, I started off of the crucial zone here, and I ended off of the crucial zone here. And that just makes it easier for me to mask, but also it makes it easier to unmask. When you come by later, you don't have to search for your edge and peel it up with your fingernail. You can just grab a hold of that sucker and unmask the whole thing at once. So now I've got all this in here. Now what you do is you take your spreader or your hard card and you put it down in that corner and you put a little English on it, like this, see? I'm twisting it. And if you twist it too hard or get too Western with it, you can fold your tape over on itself. So you have to be a little bit careful, but you do want to put a little bit of English on it, just so it's actually pushing on the entire width of the tape you put in there. So again, put a little bit of, see, I'm just twisting it, look what it's doing to it. And then you run it around like that. And as I mentioned earlier, we went ahead, you can see where we cleaned this off, same with that wheel. You see how clean that is? So we're ready to stick tape to this. It's ready to go. So what we'll do is we'll get our plastic out, and if you're masking up more than one wheel, especially semi wheels, but any size wheel, what you do is you get your plastic, you get it out of the box, and you eyeball or you measure as much as you need to go from the top to the bottom. This is 16-foot wide plastic. So if you stretch it from the ground up to the top of the wheel, and I don't mean from the top of the box to the top of the wheel, I mean from the ground. So you have to either take a measurement or be good at eyeballing or put it up here and then reach down and press that down into place to make sure that you've got the right measurement. Then you cut it off with a razor blade. Now, what I've got is 16 feet of plastic here when all we're doing is we're masking one wheel. Well, that's not very efficient. But the way we do it, it is, because we never mask up one wheel. I can't recall a time where we had a project where we just had one wheel to mask up. Maybe a spare tire on a trailer or something, but even then, you're probably masking up the tires on the trailer. So the efficient part about that is now that we have that stretched out, we cut that off, we stretch this out we unfold it to 16 feet wide, and now we've got enough to do basically 4 wheels, just with that one piece that we cut off. And if you look closely, you can see where that says Norton. Now, what's important about that is if you're reading it backwards and it says Norton backwards, then your plastic is facing the wrong way. If you can read it and you can read it correctly, your plastic is facing the correct direction, because almost all automotive plastic, and don't use plastic that isn't automotive plastic, use automotive masking plastic. And when you do, one side of it is treated in a way that paint will stick to it and not just flake off of it. The other side isn't. So if you can correctly read the manufacturer or anything that's been printed on it, then you've got it faced out the right way. And if you get it the wrong way, you'll prime it and everything will go fine. Then you'll come through and go to paint, and the pressure just from you painting your wheels will take that primer that's already on there and it'll blow it off in sheets, and it'll be sticking in your wheels, sticking in your paint, blowing all over the shop. It comes off incredibly easy. But if you have the right side facing out, the paintable side facing out, then it won't. It'll stick. That's what's important. Not both sides aren't treated, only one side is. So when you can read the manufacturer or anything on it correctly and not backwards, you've got it right. We're getting it just to the edge here. Just to the edge. And we're getting the bottom. Holding the bottom down here. Holding the top up here. And holding this edge here. This edge is what's important, so you're not wasting a bunch of material. Then pull the rest of your plastic snug to make sure that that edge is true. Now, once I've once I've eyeballed it all, and I know that this side is in place, and the top is in place, and the bottom is in place, I'll go ahead and start tacking it. I'll tack the top, I'll tack this side, then I'll tack the bottom with 1.5 inch tape. 6 inches or so. Now I'll come over here, stick it to the plastic first, and then fold it over onto the... Now that's done. Now we'll do the top. About 6 inches, 8 inches, something like that. Now that we have this side tacked, we can go ahead and pull on the top and the bottom and snug it all up. Pull this way and snug it all up. See how it kind of tightened up? Now, because it tightened up, you look, we have too much plastic up here, and we have too much down here. Too much is better than not enough. That's definitely not a problem, but I'll show you what you do. You just fold this over on itself and then mask it. Just like that. You do the same with the bottom. Fold it over on itself, underneath. Now we'll have it snug all the way across here. Pull it snug. You don't have to pull it super tight, but pull it snug. See? Now we've got that side, the top, and the bottom. Now at this point, we'll get our razor blade out, our nice sharp razor blade, and we'll go ahead and pull the plastic out. Now, leaving your plastic on the dirty floor like that isn't always the best idea. But I'm just masking up this one wheel in this fashion to show you how to do this. A lot of times what I'll do is, when I first put this on there, I'll just wrap it around the back and throw it up there. Now we don't have it on the dirty floor. I just got caught up in what I was doing and kind of just left it there, going on to the next step of this tutorial. But really, when I'm concentrating on what I'm doing and I'm masking up wheels, I'll set it around back, or I'll bring it over here and tuck it into the next wheel. That way we're just keeping it off the floor. And so what I'll do is I'll put some tension on it, and then I'll go ahead and cut it. You don't have to form it to the wheel if you don't want to. You just cut it off straight, because over here, you're gonna be folding this under, not over, under itself, tucking it up here and tacking it. So you can do the same here. That's no big deal. If you cut it to the form of the wheel and then you move on to the next wheel, you're gonna have those weird jagged pieces sticking out anyway. So I just cut them off straight. Now pull it back straight, holding the top and the bottom, get it snug. Find out where the edge of the wheel is. You just make sure that you're close to the edge of the wheel and just hack the whole thing off. See how I didn't cut the top? I started cutting a few inches down from the top. That way, because if you cut the top first, then all your tension is gone. You can't have tension on it anymore because you're busy pulling on this part and the whole thing is becoming distorted. The whole thing is becoming distorted and it's pulling weird. So I don't cut the top to begin with. I cut down a little ways. That way I can hold tension on it and cut the whole thing. Now that the whole thing is cut, then I come up to the top and finish it. Then I tuck my plastic back out of the way for the next wheel, and we do that same process again. 8, 10 inches, 6 inches, usually 6 to 8 inches is what I do. Fold it back under itself, grab a hold of it, put some tension on it, just enough to make it snug, and then roll it back under itself with your fingertips like that, like you're rolling a joint, if you've ever, been around that kind of thing. I never have, but I've heard tell. Just like that. Put it to the plastic first. Stretch it out a little bit by holding onto the tape, because now I can do whatever I want. Put it out onto the wheel. You're done there. So now we've got all 4 sides, if you want to call it that, top, bottom, left, right, they're all tacked. Now, 6 to 8 inches. Do the same thing up here. Fold it under. Who cares if it's gobbed under there and a little bit sloppy looking? That makes no difference for what we're doing. Stick it to the plastic first, snug it up by pulling on the tape. Tape it up. 6 to 8 inches. Fold it under, stick it to the plastic first, and then bring your tape around and stick it to the wheel. Then we'll rinse and repeat, and we'll do it on the rest of it. Now, a lot of times what I'll do, depending on the wheel and the situation, as you can see, we've got it now. Sometimes if that bothers you, that's never going to become an overspray issue, but if that bothers you, put another little piece of tape there and another little piece of tape there. When we do front tires on these trucks, now I know I'm going to be getting up here and walking around a lot. When the hood is closed, I'm going to be blowing off the fender and then sanding the fender and then blowing off the fender. And that all takes place right above here. And that tends to really ripple the plastic and really affect things. So for front wheels in particular, I will go ahead and take the time to put more tape. Sometimes I'll tape across the arch of the entire top of the wheel. Once I've got it all tacked in place, I'll just fill in those spots with tape, at least down to here. It doesn't have to be all the way around. That way I know no matter how much of that fender work I'm doing, how much blowing on it, how much priming and all that stuff, it's not sitting there and rippling the plastic and undoing part of the folds or causing any kind of mischief. And you'll get in here and you will cut the plastic just to the outside of your vinyl. Don't hook your blade to the inside of the wheel and do it. Just go to the outside of your vinyl. Like this. See, I'm just cutting just to the outside of my vinyl, barely touching the tire with the razor blade. The razor is barely touching the tire. It's just a guide. It's not like you can cut the tire up, but still, go all the way around. Now that this is half done, it's going to start trying to get squirrely on you. Once you get this cut down to here, this is all just going to kind of flow into it. So you have to grab it with the other hand and put a little bit of tension on it and finish it out. Just like that. Now we've got it cut out in a way that we can work with. Now you'll take your 1/2 inch or 1.5 inch tape, and you can use smaller tape, but I don't like to mess with it. I mean, you can use 3/4 and go around it. And on smaller wheels, it works better. On tiny little like boat trailer wheels or something like that, even car tire, car-sized wheels, domestic wheels, smaller tape will make that corner easier. But you do take a chance of just having the slightest little gap between your tape and that plastic that you may not see, and then when you go to unmask it, you'll have little white strips in it, which do clean up, easily. But for semi wheels and bigger wheels, I always use 1.5 inches. I'll start over here on the side, and what you do is you tack it with your thumb right on the vinyl. Now, this is where it gets tricky, and this is where the more practice you get, the better off you're going to be. What I like to do is let it fold in on itself like this, and then tack it again. Now look at that. See that big fold in it? And now I'm going to do that again and again. Tack it. Stretch out a little more tape. Don't keep a mile of tape out there. And again, leave a little bit of your vinyl showing. Put a little fold in it. Tack it. A little more tape. A little fold in it. Tack it. A little more tape. A little fold in it. Tack it. Again, more tape, little fold. Then you come through and you press down those folds. And the more efficient you get at that, the smaller your folds become. Pretty soon your folds are like that, and they're more plentiful. They don't have to be big and a couple inches apart, but if you're starting out, that's a good way of doing it. They can eventually get to where they're like that. A little closer together and a little bit smaller once you figure out your system. And I would suggest figuring out your system before you go masking a bunch of wheels. So again, little bit of fold, little bit of fold. Every place that you think you need it. Again and again, all the way around. And see how that looks? Quite a bit more consistent. Once you get your groove and you get your system figured out, then again, just bringing out a little bit of tape at a time. If you have half a mile of tape sticking out there, that is just going to become tedious. So once you figure your system out, you can get more and more efficient about it. So if you've got a bunch of wheels, you've got a semi sitting there that's got 2 drop axles on it, then, you got a lot of wheels that you're masking up. And if you figure out a system in the first wheel or two, that's going to pay off. Now, the reason that I ripped my tape off there is because for me, just me personally, coming around this way is bothersome for me. It gets harder and harder to do as I come underneath. So I'll rip my tape off there, then I'll start here and I'll come this way and come underneath. You don't have to do it this way. This is just what works for me. And now we've got the whole thing finished. At this point, you take your spreader, put it on there. See what I'm doing? See how I'm not getting up there onto the plastic, because if you put a bunch of pressure on that and drag it across your plastic, you'll just tear your plastic in spots. You won't rip it all to shreds, but you'll put little stress tears in it. So you just put enough English on it to get it there, and you run it all the way around like that. Now, this wheel is 100% ready to paint. You can prime it, paint it, finish it out, and then when you go to unmask it, you just come from the top, pull it down. A lot of times this stuff will come right with it. Unmask it however you like, actually, but that's how you mask a wheel for paint. Now over here, you can see he's got this ready with vinyl. He waits till last on this in case he needs to open the door for anything. Same reason on the hinges. In case he needs to open the door for anything, this is the last thing he does. He did this window just like I showed you that back window. And he does these inside or these upper windows. See, he takes the time to tuck it clear down in there, clear up against here, all the way around. Super tidy. All right, so the boys finished masking this up. As you can see, this is how they do the front wheels. And oftentimes they'll go ahead and do that as well, because if this wheel was on the back, they would never do that because we don't disrupt that very much back there. But up here, we spend so much time messing with the hood and getting down up and off and on the tires so many times that it's easy to rub the plastic through right where your leg touches it or a ladder scrapes it or anything else. So sometimes they'll do it that way. This is what I mentioned. They'll go ahead and mask this up, leave everything else. See how we do the steps? And then this is how they'll typically do, like I mentioned, there's the headlights. This is how they'll typically do the grill. They take the time to go ahead and get inside there, because if you don't, if you just mask across it, by the time you have opened the hood once or twice, you've already broken through your masking right there. So it might be a little more time consuming to do it that way, but considering how many times we'll open and close a hood on a job like this, it's worth your time. This is how we do the lights, the blinker lights. Nice and tidy. This is how we typically will do tanks. It doesn't have to have the paper in it. It's just that they must have fallen short there with the plastic, or there must be a seam there or something like that. Went ahead and went over this with a little more tape because it's easy to wear through right there. But then back here, we'll go ahead and, especially if I haven't done the body work yet, we'll go ahead and just toss a tarp over it. This tarp isn't going to stay throughout the job. As you can see, it's masked up. Nice and tidy like it should be. But we'll go ahead and throw a tarp over it, because by the time body work hits it and then you blow it all off and you're stepping across it a bunch, it's really easy to just wear right through. A couple steps, you put your foot on there and then pivot one time, and then you just rip that plastic. So either we'll put paper up there or we'll just throw a tarp up there until the bulk of the work's done. And then once the work's done, when it comes time to go ahead and prime and paint, then we'll just pull the tarp off of there and we've got a perfectly preserved mask tank beneath it. Back here, here's what the wheels always look like. Here's this all finished up. You can see he pulled this loose, just took the bolts out, and instead of clipping the wire, which he could have done, it wouldn't have hurt anything. Instead, he just brought it over here and incorporated it into this masking. So on put together day, we can just unmask it and put it all back together. And then up here, you can see, and a person could just take the time to pull these off here, but a lot of times the back sides of these are corroded and rusty. And when you go sticking a screwdriver in there, and good luck coming across a screwdriver that you're not going to tweak or mess up putting it in there. If you have one with that big of a straight slot, then good for you, but not many people do. And it's easy to just mess up these threads or twist your straight slot. It's really hard to keep a hold of on the backside if the underside is corroded, and they almost always are. So for us, it's just easier to just mask these up. Here's what they do with those. Again, we would pull these off here, except for they have huck rivets on them, and we don't feel like grinding those off. So up here, they just mask these off because these are those rubber stoppers that the hood closes on. On some of these Kenworths are here, and on some they are not. Up here you can see how they've done the windshield, just like I showed you on the back window, same exact thing. Here they've taken the time to get the washer fluid reservoir, so when I go to shoot white paint on the other side, it doesn't ghost on it. Up here, you can see, got the antenna. Sometimes we'll pull them. Sometimes if those bolts don't want to come out, we'll just mask them. There's the horn mounts. You see up close how they've done them. Tucked everything in nice and tight so we can actually shoot paint and prep in and around them. Same with these, tucked in so we can actually get under here and do our job. The good news is we got shop foreman Kevin joining us today. Haven't seen him in a little bit. I mean, we see him on the property every day, but he comes and goes as he pleases, and he doesn't come around as much in the summertime. But he's going to join us in the shop today. He's not a big fan of the wind. Until we start stirring up a bunch of dust, that is, and then I don't allow cats in here. Dust, fumes, either one. But until that time, old Kevin's going to be doing some quality control, and it's about time. We're probably getting out of hand. And now, to separate out fenders on a truck that's not a 359 or a 379 Peterbilt, because those are self-explanatory, the fenders are bolted on. So those are pretty easy to deal with. Some of these old auto cars and International Paystar 5000, some of these where the fenders are bolted on, it is obvious how to separate the fenders. But on a truck with a hood like this, a fiberglass hood, it's all one piece, separating out the fenders is a little bit more of a challenge than that. And I'll show you what I do. I use 1/8" tape. You know, it's going to be easier to use 1/4" tape because it's going to be easier to mask to, but I don't want to leave that big a footprint on this truck, so I'm only using 1/8" tape. Now, what I do, and the way I separate them out, is I do them all the very same as each other. They're identical to each other. And the way I do it is I pick a point that I'm going to mask to. For instance, I go about 1/2 inch inside of this screw tip right here, this screw head right here. I go about 1/2 inch to the inside of it. And that's where I start every one of them. Now, the way I do it, and I'll show you here, I'll stretch out some tape, not too long, about 1 foot to 18 inches is all. And then I will carefully place it. You don't need to be stretching your tape here. There is no reason to stretch it. There's almost no tension on this tape. And I'll come in about 1/2 inch. And then I will just connect just the end. That is it. The very end. Now see the position I have my hand in right here? I have my knuckles dragging right there on the actual side of the hood, and I have my tape positioned right there. Now what's important about that is I hold that position all the way around the top of the hood. These 900 hoods are set up in such a way that this is a very convenient way of doing it. Not all hoods are like this. If you're doing some heavily curved hood like a Cascadia hood or something like that, you're gonna have to eyeball it and make sure your stripe is straight. You're gonna have to do it manual and the hard way. This way, I've developed a system that I can just do it every time. I could do it blindfolded. And what I do is I keep my hand in that exact same position. See how far the tape is from the hood? I keep it just like that. Now I'll come back, I'll just keep it just like that. Same exact position. Now I'll drag my knuckles right up the hood, let the tape unwind on its own. I'm not putting any tension on, I'm letting it unwind on its own. And I'm keeping my tape the exact same distance from the hood. Now I'm careful, I'm going to bring my arm up over this, the whole time concentrating on keeping this the same. The whole time keeping that distance the exact same, my hand placement the same. My hand, everything is frozen in place. These other things are the things that I'm paying attention to, trying to make my way up over this light without messing that up, because that's the priority. So again, we're going nice and slow. And I'm just dragging my hand, my knuckle right across the hood, and keeping my hand in the exact same position. All the way around. until I get to here. Now, before I do any other manipulation, I'll step around in front of the truck and I'll look at what I've got. Then I'll go ahead and stretch this out a little bit more. Now it's time to do it manually. Bring it down, keeping everything straight. Stop just short of that. See that? Now, with this still up off the fender, I will lightly press on this and find where the bend is in it. Then I'll lightly place my knuckles on it, very lightly, reach up and bring this down. Now once I have that there, I will go through this little corner right here while I'm holding the tape out where it needs to be. Now I've gone through that corner and at the same time I've held the tape over here right where I want it to be. That's right where I want that to go down. So then I'll plant that down. Now I have it roughly exactly where I want it. It's nice and straight. It's bent where it needs to be bent. And at this point, I can go ahead and let go of the roll of tape. That's no big deal anymore. And then I'll go look over my stripe. I'll make sure it is straight. I'll look down this side, make sure it's nice and straight. There's no bobbles in it. And if there is any noticeable bobbles in it, you can't, it's rare that you can just fix them right there on the spot. A lot of times once you've gone this far, you just got to start over. If you've got a bobble in it that you don't like, don't be afraid to just start over. I mean, this is a truck you're going to have to look at in your driveway or in your yards for the rest of the time you own it, and you're going to know right where that bobble is. You might as well just take the time to redo it until you get it right. Now that I've got that to where I'm happy with it, I'm going to come through here before I do anything else. If I stretch this down the front and finish everything I'm doing, and then while I'm coming back here pressing this down, I create a bobble, now I've got just that much more I've got to unmask. So now I'm going to come through here. I'm going to place my hand here against this nice and tight, and then I'm going to just touch this in place. Just touch it. Just to make sure I've gone all the way through that corner. Then I'm going to come up here, same thing. Just touching it. Now I've got my hand up here instead of down here because I don't want to put a bunch of fingerprints all over my new paint. So I've got my hand up here, just touching it. Just touching it in place. Now up here, I don't have to worry about touching it so much. The reason is because it's got tension on it. It's strung across the top of the hood. So it's almost redundant for me to come through and touch it in all these spots because it's already pressed against there. So now I'm just using very light pressure, just dragging my finger is all I'm doing. Just dragging basically the weight of my finger all the way over it. Now that I've done that, now I can put some pressure on it and come back. Lightly drag, because I haven't done this yet. And then heavy drag. Now that part's ready to go. Now all I need to do is just stretch it down over the front here. And so now my whole goal is to make sure that this distance right here, 3/4 of an inch to an inch, whatever it ends up being, is the same all the way down the side of the headlight. Because this is a perfectly rectangular headlight that sits in there like it should. And if your stripe is more narrow or more wide at the bottom than it is at the top, then it's going to catch the eye. You're going to be able to notice it. So you want this distance to be the same from the top to the bottom of this. So we're stretching out just enough to work with here. We're not too much, and we're not putting a bunch of tension on it. There's no need. No need to be pulling on this tape. Now, while you have it out there, you'll take your other finger, and that's where you'll place it. Be careful not to put a bunch of tension on it or bring the roll of tape clear over here or clear over here, because you will actually create a bend at the other end of your finger. Then when you place that there, you'll wonder why there's a little crook right there right before where you pressed it down, and that's because you put some English on it. So you got to kind of keep this straight with your finger if you can. Now that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is just lightly press it down with one finger. Lightly press on it. Now I'm going to try and make this little corner right here because it's going to be a little bit of a corner. So I've stopped right here at the beginning of the bend. I'm going to try and run my finger over it while I move the tape over to where I want it, because I don't want this straight down. I don't want it right here. I want it over here. Pull out enough that we can work with. Don't go pulling on it. There's no reason to have tension on it. The weight of the tape is enough for what you're doing here. And then make it to the corner. And see, I made that slight little bend right there. And then I'm going to place this ever so carefully right where I want it. Now, don't be afraid to go over to the other side because I've already done the other side. On your second side, don't be afraid to completely stop and cross-reference it to your first side. So they're proportional. So when you're standing in front of the truck and the truck's all painted, you're not thinking, oh crap, there's 3/4 of an inch right there, and on the other side, it's only 1/4 of an inch. That'll drive, well, it would drive me crazy. I don't know how you feel about stuff like that, but I like things to be somewhat symmetrical. So don't be afraid to cross-reference your other side until you do get it right. Even if you have to measure out on the other side and then come over here and put a mark, and the way you want to mark fresh paint oftentimes is just with a little dab of tape. Just put a little dab of tape right where you want it, and then just bring your tape right to the inside of it or the outside of it or wherever you've placed your marker tape. That looks pretty good to me. And so I'm going to lightly drag my finger, and now a heavier drag. Now a heavier drag up here since I only lightly drug it before. Now I'll come in here with a razor blade, cut it a little bit down here, fold it up under, and now you're done. Now you've got the fender separated on your Kenworth or Western Star is another good one that has a good, the sides of the hood are good and straight. But if the sides of the hood are bowed in like this, I mean, you have to consider that. You need a fairly straight hood to do this trick. Otherwise, you are just doing it manual. You've got a ladder, you're clear up above it, you're holding your tape out, you're being careful and pulling it down, making sure it's straight. If it's not, you pull your tape back up and then you pull it back down until it's straight. It's a bit of a process. And for different trucks, it can be more of a process. Now, when you go to run your masking paper, again, what you want to do is you want to have only 1/8 of an inch of paper tape sticking above your paper. And then you want to take that 1/8 of an inch of tape and you want to go about halfway across this tape. Don't go clear to the outside edge. Try and stay in a little bit. Halfway or in there. Don't come too far this way. Don't go too far this way. Try and stay about halfway across. That way you're keeping that footprint just as small as you possibly can, but it's still sticking to the truck enough that it's not going to blow up with air pressure and let a bunch of overspray in. And then another thing you want to do is you want to observe this curvature right here. If you put your paper in there and then string it tight across here and tape it over here tight, this is going to be so tight that it won't be long. You'll go to lunch and then you'll come back from lunch and you'll look and you find out that your paper is actually pulled away from that right there. Your paper tape and everything is actually pulled away and you've got this little tint sticking across there. So you want to make sure that as you're masking it, that you lay your paper in there and you kind of put your hand on the low spots. This whole curvature, that advice goes for this entire curvature, but this is the worst part of it. But even like in here, you don't want to string this tight across over to here. If you do that, then that's putting a lot of tension on your paper tape, and it's tension that's actually pulling it out. You're going to be fighting to keep that stuck the entire time. And if you're not paying attention, you'll let all kinds of overspray in. So you want to make sure that this is pressed in enough and that this is pressed in enough, and that you, when you set your paper on here, that you put your hand on here and make sure your paper's in there nice and loose and then tape the top. Otherwise, that tension is going to drive you crazy and it's going to give you kind of a poor result. All right, well, they're just finishing up masking these fenders up and we're getting ready to start sanding on it. And as you can see, some of the decisions made, and these two fenders will never be the same because these guys make different decisions than each other, and I make different decisions, yet all three work just as well. As you can see, we've used different pieces of paper here and then tape the seams, and we'll end up taping these seams with the wider tape as well. So we go over it with the thinner tape, then we go over everything with the wider tape just to make sure that these seams don't leak. And you can see, nice and tidy. This is what I was talking about. Hey, you have to be pressing on this while you're masking it, otherwise there'll be tension across there. Same with this side. You can see that this isn't pulled tight. This is nice and loose. This isn't going to come out. You see, this isn't going to sit and pull out, but you have to relax this and tape it that way. Otherwise, it will sit and pull out. Now, I just got done shooting paint on this truck. Just finished the hood. Now I'm getting ready to do the paint on the chassis, but I want to show you something interesting. This time of year, almost every year, but especially this year, we get inundated with these beetles. We call them apple bugs because whenever you touch them or disrupt them in any way, they let out some sort of secretion that's clear liquid that smells like really, really potent apple scent, like apple extract. And they get into everything. They can cause you electrical problems because they're trying to find a place to tuck away for the winter, so they tuck into everything. And we find them all over the place. And I'll just show you one here quick. This is on the outside of the window. There's one down in my fan, trying to survive, holding on for dear life. And so you can imagine, just get done shooting this. And those are capable bugs, man. They can walk around in wet paint all day long and then take off and won't hurt them a bit. So you got to be careful. So we did all of our prep today in the shop with the doors closed. Even though it was hot in here and everything else, we did all the prep with the doors closed, and we run the fans with just that door open over there, that walk-in door. Pulling air from the shop next door so we don't have anything getting in here. And last night before I closed the shop down, I made sure every single one of them I could find was gone. But now check this out. See, here's one. Right? Look at this. What is that? Probably 20 right there on that rug? Then look at the door. Because they're tucking in underneath my door and coming in that crack, and then during the warm part of the day when the sun comes through the door, they're wanting back out. And look how many there are. Look at that. Look at those. So you can begin to appreciate how nerve-wracking that is when you have an entire truck shot. If one lands on the door and walks around a little bit, I got to reshoot the door. If one walks around on the hood a little bit, I got to reshoot the hood. And how many do you suppose are there? 100? I'll bet there's at least 100 right there by my door. So this time of year, man, shooting paint is pretty high risk. All right, gang. Well, here it is first thing the next morning. And I've got a pretty busy day on tap. So first thing I'm going to do here is get these fenders unmasked. And if they turned out fine, then the boys are going to come in and we're going to go ahead and get this truck all put together this morning. It'll leave here this afternoon and be replaced by another one this afternoon. And as soon as we're done with this morning, here in just the next couple hours, I'm going to go out and begin digging my water line in. I'm hoping to get it dug in and placed and get most of the ditch filled back in by tonight if I can. Burning daylight, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to it. Well, okay, that went pretty much flawlessly. Now I'm going to go next door, start grabbing some parts and getting them stacked up over here because the boys are going to be here any minute. We're going to go ahead and get this truck reassembled after we get it unmasked and get it pulled out so we can get on to the next project today, of which there are a few. Well, okay, gang, this truck's all put back together. Let's go ahead and walk around it and have a look. Here's how the passenger side chassis turned out. Here's how the driver's side chassis turned out. As you can see, there's no paint back here on this tank. There's no paint on the side of the engine. Everything's pretty clean. All right, here we have an 07 Kenworth W900. When this truck showed up, it was actually in pretty darn good shape. The clear coat was burned through in a few spots. Not terrible, but it was noticeable. The hood was in decent enough shape. There weren't too many repairs. The doors, I don't think needed any repairs. There was just some paint chips on it we had to take care of and some rivets that we had to replace. But other than that, they were in decent shape. The back was in as good a shape as I've seen in a long time. Although it did have dents. It had well over a dozen dents. But for this shop, it had almost no dents. It was in really good shape. But we did take care of the dents that were there. Had a couple of nutserts spin out on the, 3 of them in fact, on the rear lights here. And I replaced those. We had 2 nutserts spin out on the sides of the visor. And then 1 out in the center. We replaced all of those. Chassis was in pretty darn good shape, but I went ahead and blasted it with a used sand just so I could abrade it. Then went ahead and double primed it, double coated it with 2K urethane. So it turned out good. These were probably the worst part of it. They were all rusty. They're in good shape now. Chassis is definitely shiny and good to go. Like I said, back looks good. The doors didn't really need much for attention. A couple paint chips. There was 1, 2, 3 rivets missing. Went ahead and replaced those. Other than that, this truck was in pretty good shape. And that made it as good a candidate as any to show you some of my masking tips and tricks, things that work for us. It's not as though I wrote the book on masking or fiberglass work or body work or any of the other things that I'm showing you on these trucks. But I am showing you what nearly 30 years, 30 total years, but over 25 years doing it full time and professionally and having my own business has done for us. These are tricks that have been developed over time and that have withstood the test of time. So there's a lot of ways to do things. This is the way we do it. Hey, if you like this video, you should take the time to hit the like button. It's going to help me grow my channel. And if you want to see more of what goes on around here, you should check us out at Facebook at Flash Industrial Painting. And if you want to see more videos like this, or a multitude of other tutorial videos, or domestic auto body, or gardening, or art, or dirt moving, or carpentry, or any of the many, many things we do around here, you might as well hit the subscribe button while you're at it, because, you know, we always got something going on. We'll see you guys around.